essentially you're hiring me for someone like me for my opinion and my set skill, right?
Yep.
Um, when you don't listen to what I have to say, my taste, my opinion, there's a certain point when I don't want to have that battle.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to listen to me, and you've already paid me for it too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're not getting your money's worth if I have to be so cold about it. But
Right.
B, you're just exercising your ego, and you don't know what I know. You
Mhm.
haven't been where I've been, but I've done everything to go where you've been.
Mm.
I've come undone and I've humbled myself to go where you want to go. And and at that point, when I say, well, I want to add this little thing in that chorus because I know it needs it. In my heart of
Mhm.
hearts, I know it needs it. You
Mhm.
don't have a track record. Let's just say you don't have a
Yeah.
track record of success. I've do.
Yeah.
Um, I've made big records. You've never had that success, but it's a fine balance of following your intuition, your instinct,
Yes.
and listening to what somebody else has to say.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up and coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Chin is a producer, singer, songwriter, and multi instrumentalist from Toronto, Canada. Currently residing in Vancouver, Chin speaks the universal language of music to connect to a diverse global audience. He's earned 3 Grammy Awards for his work with Eminem and Lecrae, as well as multiple Grammy nominations for Aloe Black and Pink. Injeti is also a 2-time Juno Award winner and led a TEDx speech on the universal language of music. Chin boasts an impressive roster of collaborations with global talent, including Drake, Clips, Pink, Aloe Black, J. Cole, Anderson .Paak, and Cautious Clay. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chin.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to have you here. So, do you want to tell us your story briefly for our listeners who this might be their first introduction to you? Just a bit about
Sure,
who you are and your journey in the biz, how you got where you are today.
for sure. I'm basically a Toronto kid. I was raised there, but I was born in India, in a city called Hyderabad, and I my family moved to Toronto uh, just for my health reasons.
Mhm.
And but while I was in Toronto, music was something that was always in my life. My dad was this really fantastic singer, and he always had it playing. And it was because of him I was exposed to all the different types of music that I know now and that are a huge influence for me. And growing up, I was musically active in high school and had a band and just practiced and rehearsed and had all the did all the things that bands do, and
Yeah,
did like the battle of the bands and the gigging and all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And then eventually, when I was in university, I was at the faculty of music there, at U of T, and
Mhm.
a band, and that band would like play on weekends and at the local parties. And uh, I remember, I think it was the summer of '94. I can't remember, but we decided to just make some music. And my brother and my father, bless his soul, um, built a recording studio in my brother's bedroom for me, and
Wow.
well, for us. And we made a CD. And when the CD was finished, we put it out independently on consignment at HMV at the time. And and then also just by word of mouth, and it eventually sold, from what I understand, like I think it was 70,000 units, and that
Wow.
that got us a lot of attention, and that kind of uh, put me in the business of music. And
Yeah,
then eventually I moved here, and here I am making records for people because that
that's
band,
pretty awesome.
yeah, that band eventually it came to an end, and it was called Basis Space. We won a
Yeah.
Juno Award for it, and
Yeah.
it's a thing that I'm very proud of. But it's also led me to where I am now.
Yeah. Well, here on the Vocal Lab, we aim to shine a light into the industry kind of through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then. So, with that in mind, if you were starting your career all over again, is there anything that you'd do differently or what would you do the same? Um, just along the way.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would the thing that I would do now that I didn't before is what I did when I first wasn't in the music industry. When I was just
Hmm.
a kid in a band, I would follow my instincts
Yeah.
way more. Even when we had our so-called success, I was following my instincts until the industry came into it, and then
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I don't know, maybe I better listen,
Hmm.
but they didn't know a thing, and I still they still don't, and I think it's important to just follow that gut feeling that you have.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that that's something that is really important for young emerging musicians to hear because I
Yes,
think we're so often sort of told that somebody older and wiser knows better.
yeah,
And somebody older and wiser has more experience.
yeah.
And yes, there are things that you can learn and draw upon from their experience, but that doesn't discount your own gut feeling around what's right for you.
Yes, and I think the artists today do that because of getting a record
Hmm.
deal isn't the end all be all anymore,
Yeah.
and they really do follow um, their instincts and their vision is. And a lot of the artists that I work with and the people that I know, they have a vision, and the ones that are really doing it are the ones who are following through with their own vision. I still
Hmm.
work with people who are still searching, and that's okay too.
And I know a bit about your story and how much music was woven into the fabric of your family
Hmm.
and how much it brought your community together.
Yeah.
You did a TEDx talk about how
Hmm.
music connects us all. My
Yes.
husband and I watched it the other night
Yeah.
and it was really moving.
Oh,
I
thank you.
really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
I will link to the TEDx talk in the show notes below, but I really encourage listeners to go. It's not super long, it's about 15 minutes, I think,
Yeah.
thereabouts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I really encourage you to go and check that out because I thought it was quite moving talking about your how you found music. So do
Hmm.
you want to talk a little bit about your relationship to music and sort of what it's meant to you in your own personal journey?
Yeah, I mean, not to sound dramatic, but I think it's the only thing in life that hasn't let me down.
Mhm.
Everything around it has been challenging at times, and has let me down. And
Mhm.
sometimes those things around it make you feel like it's the music's fault, but the actual thing that's going on inside an artist's heart and mind, it's there, and people call it a gift. It is a gift. Sometimes I call it I'm cursed with the blessing. That was my journey with it, and that still is my journey with it. It's been a healer. It's been a protection. It's been a thing that I could really express my every thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really my relationship with it, and it was hard when I had to use it to make a living. You know,
Yeah.
it was more like
Yeah.
it was therapeutic at first, but then what I learned as time gone by, I've learned to do all of it together. You know,
Yeah.
it's the only thing. It's the only thing that has constantly been there. People come and
Mhm.
go. You're flavor of the month, and you're not. Your inside, your voice, your inner voice, sometimes can lie to you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, tell you things that aren't true. Tell you things that could hurt you. That can make you feel things like you always expect the worst, right?
Yeah.
But because of music, I'm not like that. I'm able
Yeah.
to see the goodness in things, and the goodness in life, and most of all the goodness in myself,
Yeah.
right? So that's what it's been for me.
Yeah. I think it's really important. And I think you touched on a very important piece. People say don't believe everything you think. And
Yeah,
I think that that is something that we don't pay enough attention to sometimes,
yeah,
but
I
it's
think so.
true.
It is
Yeah.
so true. I always say your inner voice is a liar, and I also say fear is a liar.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think it's hard when we're trying to balance that piece of like your inner voice can be a liar and what you said a minute ago about listen to your instincts. So those are two seemingly opposing sentences,
yeah,
and we have to I think the challenge is that we have to learn how to balance them and learn which pieces are the ones that we do need to listen to and which pieces are the ones that are fear based and
yes.
they're coming from the wrong, they're inspired by the wrong thing.
I think you're right, and that's why I'm saying, and I hope this doesn't sound cliche or thought out, but honestly, that's why music has been such a great like compass for me. It,
Yeah.
it helps me sort out those feelings,
Yeah.
and those thoughts. It could be through sheer productivity, like just technically putting something together, to writing something on a piece of paper and trying to put those words to a melody. Kind of, I don't know what happens, but it's cerebral, but it's
Hmm.
also physiological. Like there's just something happens when those two things happen, and they make you see the truth all the time. And
Yeah.
if I didn't have that thing, I don't
Yeah.
know if I would see the truth all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's why sometimes I joke about how I'm cursed with a blessing, because
Yeah.
it magnifies feelings. So you
Yeah.
see it, and when I try to do it without music, and I just lay in bed, and my mind just goes crazy, like a lot of us, like a lot of creative types. You just I don't know why we're programmed to see the worst in us, you know?
Yeah. I think it's a pretty common struggle for creative folks.
Yeah,
Yeah, that struggle with self. And I don't know if that is a thing that feeds the creativity. Like I don't know if that has a direct relationship with the creativity itself,
yeah.
or if it's just that creative people are more prone to that sort of thinking.
I,
But it's certainly a common through line.
I think the mediums that we work in magnify those feelings.
If you um take creativity and turn it into your business.
Hmm.
So, meaning if you are a songwriter who is trying to sell their songs, or a singer who is trying to work as a singer, or take it outside of music, and you can say the same thing about actors or visual artists or any, writers, any of creative people who take their art
Hmm.
and make it business.
Hmm.
There's a lot of rejection involved in
Oh,
that process. And so I think it's quite a journey to learn to separate ourselves from the rejection, and that the rejection isn't of us.
it's a life's work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
It's
but it's hard to say, because I mean, no, it's not hard to say because it's there. The writing's on the wall, or it's
yeah.
sometimes in print.
Yep.
It takes experience to navigate through that.
Yeah.
It takes experience not to take it personally, right? I
Yep.
remember I remember once when like in my early years, I opened up for the Far Side, a group
Mm,
from Los Angeles, and I had a bad show. The audience
mhm,
was volatile. They were throwing things at the
mm.
artists. And I remember the next day, I won't go into the details because it's too embarrassing. Uh, the next day, all my friends were like, "Dude, don't look in the paper. Don't look in the paper."
Mm.
And it was like a huge picture of me. That time, the print was larger, and
Yeah.
there's a huge picture of me in that whole article. It was a bad picture too because I had base face on, and And it's like, I was doing this, I was doing this. And for those who can't see this, like I did a nasty face, but the whole article was nasty. It was about me, and he just went out of his
Uh,
way to put me down, right?
yeah.
And I somehow didn't take it as bad as I thought it would, but the feelings got magnified because other people took it worse than I did.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that summer, that same person who wrote that put me on the cover of the magazine.
Yeah.
So just like that was a great lesson to not take things personally.
Yep.
And a part
I've
of it
seen the
is,
same thing happen
yeah. And
with writers, music reviewers, where they go from hating you to loving you.
yeah, it's just what it is.
We are in an industry that sees widely differing levels of education and theory to supplement talent. Some people have formal education, some are completely self taught. Some sort of learn their craft through more of a mentorship or apprenticeship kind of a situation. What did your musical education look like, and how has that impacted your work?
Well, first of all, I think anyone who does it professionally, unless they're teachers, school has very little to do with it.
I agree with you.
You know, but it's wonderful to say that I have that under my belt.
For clarity, what was your schooling?
Oh, I have a degree in music education. I would have
Yeah.
been a music teacher, right? I'm so happy I have it because inadvertently it teaches me how to make records.
Mm-hmm.
I have history to pull from. I have theory to pull from if I need it, which is like 1% of the time.
Yeah.
I have just the experience of being taught, you
Yeah.
know. And then as I left that, I went into a group setting where it's a community and collaboration. You know, that's a whole other lesson.
Yeah.
But having that education under my belt taught me the psychology of collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
right? It taught me to listen. It taught me to really work for the song and not for my ego or my thoughts. Um, it really was a blessing, but but the creativity, school can't teach you that. You know, having a sense of self, like a musical identity, school will never give you that. And a lot of
Mm-mm.
people who rely on that are the ones who aren't really excelling in that world that they want to excel in because they think that it makes them an authority. Sometimes your
Mm-hmm.
education can give you uh, this ego that isn't it's not constructive to the end goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes learning on your own, not sometimes, all the time, learning on your own is just it's always going to learn. It's always going to teach you something.
Yeah.
You're going to write a bad song to get to a good song. You're going to have a
Yeah.
really shitty show to get to a great show. You're going to have
Yeah.
bad reviews to get to the good reviews. So, I think they work hand in hand.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the learning. That's part of the journey, is to learn that. I think it's part of the journey of creativity to learn that when you're in the middle of writing a bad song and you know that you're writing a bad song, sometimes the answer is not stop writing that song. Sometimes
Sometimes
the answer is
finish it.
keep going and get it out so that it's out of the way and you're clearing the pipes for the
Yeah,
good stuff that comes later.
yeah, but sometimes, yes, absolutely. Other times it's just like, okay, stop. It's time to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
can you hear the music in the back? They're blasting the Indian
A
music.
little bit.
Okay,
A
sorry
little
about
bit.
that.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think a lot of the formal music education is really most at play if you are going to be a teacher,
Hmm.
or if you obviously if you're going into classical music, that's a different thing. But
Totally.
in the world of pop and rock and like contemporary music, I think it sits in, it's one of the reasons I like to ask that question to guests,
It's a good
because
question.
I think it sits in a different place in contemporary music. And um I think that I think that formal music education can influence the way we write because we know more. We have more at our disposal to choose from.
Yes.
But I don't think that it is a career make or break kind of thing.
No, but I think that the two work so wonderfully hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to know when to bring one of them out.
Do you want to talk about the relationships that have been important in your career? And just to be clear, I'm not so much asking you to, drop names and stuff. You can answer it however you want. I'm talking more about what have what have been the important relationships that have fueled you to get you to where you are today.
Yeah, I think I have to say my dad and my brother
Yeah,
are really important because they're so hopeful. Music gives them so much hope. My dad performed in all the community shows and plays, and whenever he came out, the few times he did come out, he'd be the biggest, like he'd be cheering like crazy to the point where the audience was entertained by it. And he'd be I remember playing at Massey Hall, and he was in the balcony just yelling, Chin Bob. It means baby boy, Chin Bob.
yeah,
And I actually put the spotlight on him, and it was like I was so happy I could give that moment to him.
yeah,
And then there's my brother who still sees, like till this day, the absolute magic in
yeah,
music and the way it helps him in his practice, and the way he's a professor. He's actually a doctor of rehab medicine,
yeah.
and the way it helps him raise his children. Like it's all I've taken it on as well, right?
Hmm.
Until this day, like even when I'm in the business of what we do, I'm still hopeful about everything.
Hmm.
And I've been through a lot of challenges, and
Hmm.
I've been cheated. I still get cheated, you know. But I'm really happy that I haven't lost hope
Yeah,
in this thing that we do, and that's from those two. And then I have
yeah,
other people, other mentors. Like one of my biggest I would say my biggest mentor, and I don't know if it's I know it's probably not the cool answer, but I'm gonna say it's my first publisher.
yeah,
His name is Michael McCarty, and he just taught me so much
yeah,
about the mindset of creating the emotional, almost like secret code of writing a good
yeah,
song. Not that it always works for me. I've never had anyone believe in me like the way he had, and you
yeah,
know, as small as my deal was at the time, and as big as his commitment was at the time, taught me um, this is what you deserve, Chin.
yeah,
This is what you deserve um, in a partnership, in a manager, in whoever you work with. If they don't give you that, then they're not giving you anything.
yeah,
You know, I've never had that from a manager, ever,
yeah,
ever, ever. But I've had that from someone like that. And then on top of that, like just writing, I've been so lucky. I've done this with legends. I've done this with
yeah,
the best of the best, and the best. I mean, that I think, and the best thing I've learned from these people, the one common denominator is humility. They're always up for an idea. They never shut you down, and they give you the courage
yeah,
to go through with your ideas. and
yeah,
and that really came in handy as a producer, because your job is not to magnify your voice. I'm saying magnify a lot, but magnify your voice is to make their dream and their vision and their voice sound bigger, brighter, and better. And the best way to do that is alleviate all insecurities and fears, and create a safe space where they can be who they want to be, or who they're
hmm,
trying to be.
hmm,
So those are the kind of things I got. And then there's like people like, my first bass teacher or piano teacher,
yeah,
or I've people in the business that I've worked with who taught me everything from programming to synthesis to vocal arrangements. And because I'm a vocal teacher as well. Well, I'm trained to be a vocal teacher. I'm not a vocal teacher.
yeah,
Um, it helped me to bring up, like, you have to be compassionate in this thing, and then you got to know
yeah,
when to. You also have to know when to pull the okay. Now I'm the captain of the ship, so blah blah blah, right?
hmm,
So yeah, those are the
hmm,
kind of things I've gotten from mentors.
yeah. I think that's all really important. And I'm just going to pull out a little piece that you said that ties in with something you said in the last question I asked you as well, and you're talking about humility and you talked about, because I wrote it down when you said it, working for the song, not the ego.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a piece that isn't always clear when you're young in the industry. That you like your best foot forward is when you are working to serve the song, not to serve yourself. And those are not always the same thing.
No, they're not.
And
No, they're
you know,
not.
I even talk to students sometimes when because I have students who come in who are songwriters as well, and they're playing me something and it's something and it doesn't quite work in their voice, and so they're bringing it to their lesson because they want to work on it in their voice. And I've said, well, there's two ways we can approach this. We can work on this technical thing to get it good in your voice, or you can change the song a bit to make it easier in your voice,
Yeah.
or you can write the best song whether or not it's for your voice. And that song might end up being a song that maybe you try to place with another artist or whatever. But what's your goal? Are you writing to write the best song, or are you
Mhm.
writing to write the best song for you? Because they're not always the same thing.
No, they're not. They're not. And there's that's where the ego comes in place, right?
Yeah.
And on their part. Okay, for instance, I have those moments too with
Mm-hmm.
artists. Some of them are equipped to have that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them just don't know a thing.
Yep.
And essentially, you're hiring me from someone like me for my opinion and my set skill, right?
Yep.
Um, when you don't listen to what I have to say, my taste, my opinion, there's a certain point when I don't want to have that battle.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to listen to me, and you've already paid me for it too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're not getting your money's worth if I have to be so cold about it. But
Right.
B, you're just exercising your ego, and you don't know what I know. You
Mm-hmm.
haven't been where I've been, but I've done everything to go where you've been.
Mm.
I've come undone and I've humbled myself to go where you want to go. And at that point, when I say, well, I want to add this little thing in that chorus because I know it needs it. In my heart of
Mm-hmm.
hearts, I know it needs it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have a track record. Let's just say you don't have a
Yeah.
track record of success. I've do.
Yeah.
Um, I've made big records. You've never had that success, but it's a fine balance of following your intuition, your instinct,
Yes.
and listening to what somebody else has to say. For so I can only speak on part because this interview is about me, so I'll talk about what
Yeah.
my place is in it. I'm just like at a certain point, I just don't have that fight anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to try to, unless I really believe in the song, then I'm gonna go
Mm-hmm.
for it, right? And be like, guys, please, like, listen to me. I'll give you the examples. I'll show you. Can we just try it? There's a lot of
Yep.
that, right? But if if the artist or the collaborator feels like your ideas aren't important enough to
Mm-hmm.
give your ideas a chance, then I just don't have that battle, and a part
Yeah.
of me has detached from the song because it's like
Yep.
it's a very intimate thing because you're putting it all on the table, no matter what the subject
Yeah.
matter, and it's intimate. It's
Yep.
intimate. It's like really like very. It's like you're raising a child. The song is your
Yeah.
baby, right?
Yeah.
And and a good parent always wants to do what's good for the baby,
Yeah.
and a bad parent wants to do what's good for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. So it's all of it is just a fine balance. And
Super fine balance.
I found myself going through that the other day with someone, and I just like, yeah, hey, I even said, hey, at the end of the day, it's your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because in my heart, I knew they weren't going to listen to me anyways,
Mm-hmm.
and I always tend to be like, if I'm in not on this one project, choose everything. They always choose the thing that I create.
Yeah.
but then they want to make it something that it wasn't meant to be.
Right.
That's where I have to learn to release my ego because it's a collaboration now, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a constant lesson to navigate through that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you have to have a bird's eye view as a producer.
Yeah.
You have to have a bird's eye view of everything and know when it's it's their turn. It's like,
Yeah.
and then you have to give yourself enough credit to say, now it's my turn.
Yeah.
It's a give and take. It's all about exchange.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And the flip side of that, like when I have students who are going into, they're prepping to go in and record, and they're recording with a producer that they're excited about recording with for the first time, and sometimes I see them as the project is progressing, and they talk about that issue of give and take, and well, the producer wants us to do it this way, and I don't really think, and I talk through that with them. And the way I'm curious to hear your take on this. The way I have always approached that with students is, remember that you are working with the producer because, like producer XYZ, whoever it is, because you love the work that they have done before. So you are a fan of their work and you are excited to be working with them. And this is your project ultimately in the end. So my suggestion is try all the things that they want you to try, and then you get to choose which hill you want to die on.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
don't be bossy about it being your way for everything, but it is okay if there are one or two things that you feel really strongly about. It's
Yes.
also okay to voice that.
Yeah, and that's the exchange you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many unsaid rules in it because there's this other thing happens. I was collaborating with another producer on a project, and all they do is tell the artist what they want to hear. It just makes me sick. Like, it made me sick
Mm.
to my stomach. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just like it's just this tactic some people use to keep the gig, to keep the money coming, to make sure they
Mhm.
keep working. And like, my heart doesn't work that way, and that's probably why I'm not super duper producer on the charts all the time, and everybody
Yeah.
wants to work with me, is because I always tell you my opinion.
Mhm.
Even if it's to my detriment, I'll tell you my opinion of what I think of what we did to the song. It's not
Mhm.
like I pull it out and I'm miserable all the time. It's just that when I have to be honest, I'm just honest. And if they disagree, that's okay. And if they ever don't work with me because of my opinion, that's okay also.
Mhm.
I'm not for everybody, and not everybody's for me.
Mhm.
But the people I work with keep coming back. I've stretched them to places they've never been, and they've done the same thing with me, and we've had an ongoing relationship. And I think that's important to have.
Yeah.
Some of the
Yeah.
greatest records are made by a team over years and years of growing together, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about the transition from being in the performer seat to being on the writing and production end of things?
sure. When my group broke up, I moved here, and when I moved here to Vancouver, I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do. I'm still signed to Universal. Nobody else was.
Hmm.
They kept me and dropped everyone else. And I'm like, what do I want to do? Well, one thing I knew, and I'm proud of myself for knowing this earlier. I knew that I didn't want to make a record for that company, which was Universal.
Yeah.
Just didn't want to make a record for them at the time. They don't understand who I am and what I want to do. And at that time, um, black music wasn't a big thing. And the version of black music that I was a part, I'm an South Indian man who's
Hmm.
totally dedicated myself to black music culture.
Yeah.
I grew up here. This is what I know. Um, but I had my own take on it because I'm an Indian man,
Yeah.
and they weren't ready for that back then. But I was signed to them. They wanted me to put records out for them, but I
Yeah.
didn't. I didn't give them anything I was working on, and till I thought they were. I thought it was time, and by
Yeah.
that time I was independent and I could do it for myself. So
Hmm.
that's when I decided to become or have my try at this production thing because I wanted to do things the way I heard. So to
Right.
do that, I have to go and learn how to craft those sounds and songs, and then I had this great publisher who was teaching me about the value of good songwriting. So the two came together, and then I said, "Hey, I think I kind of want to try this for other people, with other
Hmm.
people, for other people," and
Hmm.
it just really was like really effortless kind of transition.
Yep.
And then I was able to use the performer side of things to help me, like, to coach vocalists
Yeah.
and guitar parts and bass parts and drum parts. The playing, being a band leader taught me how to produce records as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they both help each other.
Yeah.
And for me, the transition was smooth. Maybe at times a little worrisome because I was young and I'm like, how am I going to make money?
Thanks for joining us today. That was actually just part one of our interview. And I would love it if you come on back Thursday to catch part two. Can't wait to see you then.